Quick, Bran! Faster!
Lord Stark. Milady. The guardsmen just rode in from the hills. They captured a deserter from the Night's Watch.
Get the lads to saddle their horses.
Do you have to?
He swore an oath, Cat.
Law is law, milady.
Tell Bran he's coming too.
Ned, 10 is too young to see such things.
He won't be a boy forever. And winter is coming.
Since the onset of the global health crisis last year, the U.S. economy has been on a bumpy road. But the truth is that the economic problems faced by our country are nothing new. The health crisis just accelerated the impending decay of many of our institutions, industries, and businesses. And once that free fall began, some of us already knew there would be no turning back. We will never come back to normal. That's why, in 2021, our problems are only getting worse, and our ongoing crises show no sign of stopping. Most Americans are just realizing the depth of the impact the past 18 months had on our lives, and how everything will be different from now on. As we start to crawl our way out from the health crisis, we're just beginning to see the damage and imbalances caused by it. Of course, our leaders were the ones making decisions for us. Many of those decisions were actually not beneficial to our society. They were responsible for millions of bankruptcies, layoffs, and also for intensifying our economic woes while downgrading our living standards in that process. It's safe to say that our politicians and policymakers have failed us, and they have put us on a path of prolonged economic suffering. But once they saw most people were accepting of their nonsensical policies due to the promise of heading us out of this crisis, they started to say what the public wanted to hear so that they could keep finding justifications to spend more and more money. And they will continue feeding us with lies to keep their hands on that money with zero regards for the consequences. That's why what we have experienced so far is just a taste of what is coming next. So make no mistake, this is just the beginning of our nightmare. For that reason, today we decided to expose 8 major warning signs that the U.S. is on the verge of an irreversible collapse. Stay alert and keep your eyes wide open, because things are changing at a very frightening pace. Number 1, our liberty is under attack. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." Throughout the past year, we have been forced to give up on our liberty to allegedly ensure a sense of safety. Now, this is not about wearing face masks or social distancing or avoiding social gathering. It actually goes much deeper than that. We were attacked by reckless measures issued by the government that led to the destruction of our finances, mass unemployment, and permanent business shutdowns for the purpose of giving us a fake idea of safety. The spread of the virus was never controlled. If it was, we wouldn't be the country that recorded the most cases in the world. So we locked down our economy over and over again for nothing, really. Then after a massive wave of layoffs pushed unemployment levels through the roof, government stimulus measures not only failed in providing a safety net for millions of Americans, but also created severe imbalances in the financial market and the economy. We have never been safe. They have never been worried about our safety. they enabled the bankruptcy of hundreds of thousands of small businesses in favor of big business. They let our workers in deep economic despair just to hand even higher profits to wealthy investors. And now that our population is absolutely exhausted, our collective sense of liberty has been weakened, and we're in danger of losing it entirely. Number 2, the wildest government spending binge in history. The biggest factor that will likely trigger the total collapse of our economy is our colossal debt resultant from reckless government spending. In one single year, our national debt has climbed to almost $30 trillion. And ever since the federal government and the Federal Reserve realized they could just print, borrow, and spend more and more money without the disapproval from the public, they have gone on a wild spending binge that simply won't end. Another spending plan is already underway, while the Fed just purchased billions in bonds. At first, they were saying this money was needed to, quote, help, unquote, people and businesses to make it through the ravaging recession we faced. But now that they have created steep imbalances in the financial market, they have to come up with higher doses of liquidity to inject into the system. Otherwise, it will completely fall apart. However, at some point, it will be just impossible to keep using artificial money to solve our problems. The government is arguing that because people are spending more, the economy is recovering. But that is far, far, far from the truth. We're witnessing a temporary surge in consumer demand that will soon be eclipsed by an inflationary spike of unprecedented proportions. We are at risk of facing the worst financial crisis and economic depression the world has ever seen. And the more our leaders choose to ignore the risks, the closer we get to the financial abyss. Number 3, runaway inflation. Economists, market veterans, and financial analysts have all been warning that the pin that will pop the everything bubble will be rising inflation. At this point, the official inflation rate has already surpassed the 5% mark. By the end of the year, it will undoubtedly be much higher than that. Over the past 12 months, housing prices have soared by 20%, even though lumber prices, which were previously making the cost of a new home higher, have come back down to earth, meaning that it was never the cost of lumber that was making home prices hit sky highs. Food prices, rent, fuel, everything is facing sharp price hikes, and this is because of inflation and the countless price bubbles caused by the current monetary policies. Now, the 3 key markets that glue the financial world together are about to face a simultaneous crash. And that will occur because inflation levels are spiraling out of control, and policymakers will have to tamper with the effects of rampant inflation by raising the interest rates they have suppressed for over a year. Bond, housing, and stock markets are all on the verge of a brutal crash. And when that finally happens, we will see devastating losses and a financial crisis that will make the 2008 crash look like a Sunday picnic. Number 4, Main Street has lost its strength. We've lost hundreds of thousands of small businesses over the past year. Mom and pop businesses used to be the very foundation of our economy. And with many of them, so many gone, we've become increasingly reliant on big business. Huge corporations have largely been benefiting by the Fed's monetary policies, and they've been increasingly resilient during the recession. However, something that we learned the hard way is how these companies are susceptible to supply chain disruptions, since they outsource their production to other countries and are dependent on exports to make a profit. Consumers, on the other hand, are having to deal with sudden price increases and extensive shortages because a significant part of our small businesses have been entirely crushed, leading to permanent job losses and an increasingly less independent economy. We are being doomed to a future of higher prices, less variety, scarcity, and most worryingly, our economy is becoming extremely vulnerable to what happens in the outside world at a time when social conflicts with other nations are getting worse. Number 5, unemployment levels are still high. Two indicators that never failed to announce the coming of a financial collapse were high inflation and high unemployment. Businesses that struggled to survive during the recession are finding it hard to offer competitive wages to attract workers back to their posts, while big corporations, which are undeniably more financially prepared to offer bonuses and hike wages, even if those increases are temporary, have been able to prosper during these difficult times. Now, government checks are about to expire, and at least 9 million Americans are still, unfortunately, unemployed. That's what the official numbers say, but many economists argue that a more truthful number would be somewhere around 16 million people unemployed. So while some sectors of the economy are rebounding, others are still in trouble. These imbalances are effectively compromising our real economic growth. An economic recovery isn't about a high demand for products, but our collective ability to grow economically as workers and as businesses. And it's safe to say, our real economic growth isn't even close to what it was before the sanitary outbreak. With unemployment still at high levels and businesses at the brink of financial ruin, this is not a recovery. This is only a mirage. Number 6. Our current policies are anti-business. How can our businesses properly recover if the government keeps asking for higher taxes at a time many companies are barely scraping through to pay their rent? The new administration has some really high expectations for this economic comeback. That, or they are actively trying to make businesses fail. While big corporations can go on paying minimal taxes and minimal wages, small and medium companies that have been struggling to stay afloat during the recession are receiving no help to stay in business. Somehow, the government expects them to pay higher wages for their employees, higher taxes, higher rents, higher prices for supplies, transportation, the list goes on and on. Now, this is just making it impossible for many companies to survive. This is taking away business profits and being yet another obstacle to job creation. In other words, these government demands are setting the stage for more bankruptcies and higher unemployment in the long run. If only the trillions in spending actually helped our businesses and actually boosted our economy, we would have a much different scenario. But at this point, you have probably already realized this is not on their actual agenda. Number 7. Our national debt is soaring. For decades, economists have been alerting to the fact that our national debt was becoming unsustainable, and that was way before we hit the $28 trillion mark. Now that we are on the way to go over the $30 trillion mark, and we have been exporting our debt overseas like never before, our economy is stepping on seriously shaky ground. The only thing holding this nation up is the fact that the US dollar is still the world's reserve currency. But that status is being threatened by the pace of government spending. Simply put, our government is making our money increasingly worthless. And when the rest of the world starts to realize that and massively dump their dollar reserves, we will find ourselves in the middle of a catastrophic debt crisis that will mark the beginning of the end. Number 8. The corporate media is hiding the truth. When we don't know what is truly happening, we can't prepare for what is coming, and that's exactly what they want. An uninformed, unprepared, and frightened population is easier to rule. If the population was aware of the crimes committed by those who we call leaders, the world wouldn't be the same. If Americans knew what our government is doing to our currency, if they knew how inflation is about to explode and how our lives will be affected by it, if they were truly aware of the risks we're facing as a nation, this collective numbness would quickly evolve into rage, and we would turn this country upside down. The media is making so many believe that everything will be fine and telling them not to worry about the looming chaos. While in the dark, our people are bound to be pushed over the edge and be left with nothing but desperation. That's why we urge you to keep informed and spread the message. Global events are rapidly spiraling out of control. Our country is on the line. Painful times are ahead, but if you get ready in advance, you won't go down as the nation collapses. Stay alert.
All this talk of a modern God, or no God. There is one God, the God of the Israelites. And he is a stern and vengeful God. And we have been mocking him far too long. And now he demands retribution in blood. It is time to declare yourselves. Take sides, the saved and the damned. Read the good book. It calls for expiation, blood.
For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many.